Hey, Armand here to talk about the nodes of the moon on the Pisces-Virgo axis. The nodes get onto the axis on January 11th of 2025, and they will be there until July 26th of 2026. Just about 18 months. That's how much time the nodes spend in each sign. And they retrograde. They retrograde from the high end of the sign, like 29 degrees, 28 degrees, down to the low end of the sign, 1, 2 degrees, and then they go back to the next one. So they're going backwards around the zodiac. 18 months on each axis. Now, we have the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon. This can be explained so easily with the help of these little rings we got over the summertime for the pool. The orbit of the sun, the orbit of the moon. And from the perspective of the Earth, they cross in two places, and these places are the nodes of the moon, right? This is where the sun and the moon cross. The south node, when the moon crosses the south node of the moon, of the sun, the south node, it goes south of the sun's path, and when it goes onto the north node and crosses the north node, it goes north of the sun's path. That's the astronomy of it. All right, what we're going to do is this. We're going to talk about what it means for the nodes of the moon to be on the Pisces Virgo axis. And then we're going to talk about some hints for each sign about how this might work for you. Although, as you'll see, that's maybe not the best way to put it. So the south node of the moon is associated with those tendencies. Let's just say it brings out the more challenging aspects of each sign. It doesn't mean that we should ignore the positives that come with that sign, but we have to watch out for the challenging aspects of that sign. And the north node is where we need to go, where we should be placing our emphasis. Now, it's very helpful to know that in the last 18 months, the nodes were on the Aries Libra axis. Remember, the nodes go backwards. So from Aries into Pisces, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So with the nodes for the last 18 months from from mid 2024 to from mid 2023 to early 2025, the idea was that we needed to get away from some of the harsher side of Libra. What's Libra such a nice sign? What could be the harsh side of it? Too much attention to the rules, too much attention to protocol, a little too much diplomacy, a little bit too much of taking the other person's perspective or the other's perspective. Whereas the North Node in Aries was saying independence and kind of doing your own thing. Yes, take the other person's perspective into account. Yes, negotiate. Yes, follow the rules. But at the end of the day, you kind of got to do for yourself what's good for you. We could really kind of riff on all the different ways that this is played out and so on. But that's the basics of the nodes on the Libra and Aries axis. You can go dig out the video on that if you want and see what I said back in the day. And you'll see pretty much a good summary of what this particular configuration meant. But now we're going from the first sign of the zodiac, Aries, which is really encouraging, North Node in Aries, really encouraging independence. Keep the fire going, the internal fire going. Now going to Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac. Right? It's different. Aries is it's the sign that associates with early springtime. The first little flowers that push their way up, the crocuses that push their way up from the ground through the frost and so on. That's Aries, the strong energy, like the return of life. And then usually we follow things forward and we say like, oh, now we're going to go into Taurus, and that's the full flourish of spring. So it makes so much sense. But with the nodes, we have to go backwards. And now we're back in Pisces. And Pisces is the very last sign of the zodiac. And it's about letting go. The south node goes from Libra, where a little too much diplomacy, a little too much following the rules, a little too much, being a goody-goody, was the thing to watch out. And that's not like if you're a Libra, that's your problem. I'm not saying that. I'm saying with the South Node there, that was the collective issue. Now, the South Node goes on to Virgo. Well, what's so bad about Virgo? Virgo's a lovely sign. It's a good sign, it's a sign of service. It's an earth sign, has a lot to do with work. If we follow the zodiac forward, the springtime becomes the full harvest. And really, during the Cancer Leo period, you don't really have a lot to do, right? I mean, you got to water the crops and maybe fertilize them and weed and stuff like that. But it's not like there's that much work to do. And then Virgo is the sign of the harvest. Now comes the work. We got to reap. We got to, get in there and do the work. So it is a work-oriented sign, and it is associated with, as I said, service, and there's, quite a bit of really good stuff about Virgo. And if you're a Virgo, this is not, there's no criticism of you coming this way. This is the sign of Virgo, as the South Node may pull out some of the problematic aspects. Well, Virgo has a lot to do with purity, right? And so, it's a sign of the Virgin after all. And that purity aspect could be a bit of a problem. If you overdo it, you look too much for purity, you're looking too much for things to be kind of perfect. The snow has to be completely white. There can't be a little twig popping up in the middle of the scene. That's not going to be quite right. It's got to be pure white. A little too much emphasis on purity. Not like we're at that point in time or anything like that, but when Neptune was in Virgo back in the 1930s, there was a big emphasis on purity. You got a lot of that. It was a lot of Hitler was the racial purity. This was a big thing, and it showed up in a lot of places. Like the most dramatic and most pernicious aspects. Like hit us, and we remember them. But actually, to tell you the truth, the whole idea of purity and like you got to maintain this purity was a big, big issue at that period of time. So a little bit too much emphasis on keeping things pure. And with Neptune in Pisces, where we already have the big issue of immigration, and that's a different take on it. We're being flooded, we're being overwhelmed, we're drowning. That's the Piscean story. The South Node in Virgo adds in that purity aspect of things. Of course, also too, looking for the details. They said the devil's in the details. Well, maybe there's a little bit of devilishness in there as well. Looking too much into the details, you can lose the forest for the trees. You don't see the big picture. That is a problem that we can face with the South Node in Virgo. And this is nothing to say that collective Virgo energy is in any way problematic. It was actually quite liberating, like during the 60s with the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the gay rights movement and many, many others were all sort of inspired by Pluto and Uranus in Virgo. So it's not like this is in somewhere or another a problematic sign. It's just that when the South Node goes through Virgo, we might get a little bit too much emphasis on the details, too much emphasis on purity, and get a little lost in the weeds. The North Node in Pisces for the next 18 months is giving us a very different message, and this is one really of letting go. And I've said it before and I will say it again. If I had a nickel for every time some astrologer, new age person on YouTube talks about letting go, just gotta let go, let God, I would have, a couple bucks anyway. It sounds like one thing, but it's what actually is called for. It sounds like it's something of a platitude, but it is what's called for at this time. The ability to let go. Okay, that is kind of a lesson for us. I don't think that on the collective level we can do much with that. The Piscean perspective, though, the Piscean motto, let's say, is the big picture. Is the big picture, is seeing the big picture, and truly from like a really spiritual perspective. I'm not talking about seeing the big picture, like in the sense of, the workings of the world and society and things like that. That's fine for Sagittarius and I suppose Aquarius. That's their big picture signs as well. Pisces is the big picture that you can't see, right? It is a little bit of understanding of or intuition of or faith in the big picture that you can't see, that you can't package up, that you can't display, right? There's something larger happening, and it is not something that is within at least our rational control. Again, the Virgo wants to let stuff figure this out. The Virgo energy wants to figure this out. The Pisces energy says you can't figure it out. You kind of have to go with it. Now, I have concerns. I have concerns because we have so let go of rational processes. We have so sunk ourselves into belief systems and all kinds of uh, nonsense is a good word, I think. We've so sunk ourselves into so much nonsense that the idea of letting go of rationality. But again, I'm not saying let go into the belief system. I'm not saying let go into the political thing. I'm not saying walk away from things. That's certainly not it. I'm saying to understand that what is happening at a level that it can't be condensed into a rational explanation. It can't be condensed into a rational explanation. Not to abandon rationality. We still have to do the South Node. We still have to do all those South Node things. It's just that we can't rely upon it. We have to understand that there's something else going on as well. You got to keep your hand on the rudder. You got to keep your hand on the rudder. You can't let go. You can't go to sleep and just let the boat drift. But the understanding has to be that the destination is not really a destination, is it? The process is one that is not just about where you're steering things and where you want to go. And that brings us to the question of what does this mean for each sign? Because the answer is that if the message is to let go, then we don't really have much of a message for each sign. We don't really have much of a message in terms of what you can take away in an ego sense. Now, this year, we're going to be talking about the changing signs of Neptune, a little bit sort of the same, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus. And for each sign, we're going to be able to say, here's where the emphasis goes, and this is what you might want to do about it. For the nodes in Pisces, it's not quite so simple and it's not quite so direct. But we can do a little bit of a job of seeing where it might go for each of us. It's necessarily kind of vague and nebulous. It's Pisces. And we can give a little hint of some of the areas where we might hit a bit of a sand trap over the next 18 months. But really, for everybody, the thing is to keep in mind that there are processes at work, which it's not that they're completely unknowable. It's just that they're just not condensable to something that we can work on the rational level. They're not condensable to something that we can say, aha, A plus B equals C and that type of thing. We can't find a causal explanation for things. We can't find the truth in analysis. We can find the truth perhaps in synthesis, but not in analysis. Okay. If it sounds kind of vague, Pisces, Saturn's in Pisces, Neptune's in Pisces as we begin this anyway. And now the nodes are going to be in Pisces. So, vague and nebulous. This is part of the thing. So what does it mean if you are a Pisces? Now, let's look at ascendant and sun sign. And we'll say if you are a Pisces, I'm not even going to distinguish between the two. If you are a Pisces, this is kind of your call to really be a Pisces. This is one of the many things that you're getting over the over the last 14 and 3 years, and now for the next 18 months. This is a call to be Piscean. This is a call to really embrace the Piscean energy. And a little hint here, there's two fish in Pisces, right? And we picture them this way, but they actually swim this way. One fish is swimming horizontally, and that is the fish that we would associate with the material world. And the other fish is swimming upward, and this is the spiritual fish. And you got to decide which fish you're gonna hang on to, and which fish you want to, let's make them dolphins, which fish you want to ride, right? This is the question for you. Which fish do you want to ride? And almost certainly, if you invest yourself, you'll find yourself on that ride and going wherever it goes. And maybe that's a good place for you. That is, though, the question for Pisces. Again, you're not going to get a lot of good ego takeaways from this. Let's go forward and say, what if you're in Aries? Right now, the North Node is going to be in your 12th house. If you're in Aries, of course, your last real consideration is to let go with things, because you're in the sign of going forward. You're in the sign of showing up. This is the Aries. This is the Aries motto. I'm going to show up. And yet now the nodes go behind you. And so you're kind of being drawn back to say, well, where did I come from? What is the point of origin for me? Where am I? What am I coming out of? Right. So the little crocus that pops up in springtime has to ask itself, where did I come from? I was under the ground over there. There's all this frost and snow that I poked through. What's that about? What's the point of origin for you? Right? Whatever you're going to do, Aries, whatever your reality is, whatever you're creating in your world, what's your background? What is the thing that you're coming out of? What is the unseen thing that you're coming out of? There's a good meditation for you. I mean, Aries don't really have the patience for it, but the rest of us can say, well, it would be good if they did that. For Taurus, I think we're gonna take this 11th house approach, and we're gonna say very much this has a lot to do with your long range goals. You've had Uranus come through your sign and wreak a bit of havoc on you. I mean, we know the fixed sign of Taurus with Uranus coming through is not exactly the best experience for a lot of folks. It was good for you, really, wasn't it? But now the question is, what are my long range goals? What are now that I've kind of been broken apart a little bit, now that the tower has been crashed down to its original bricks, or like part of the tower, the wing came off the house or whatever it is, and I got to rebuild. What would I rebuild to? Right? You've been through the breakdown phase, Taurus, and now the North Node in Pisces is kind of saying, all right, now what would we like to build up? What would we like that to look like? But again, it's Pisces. And so you're kind of waiting for it to emerge rather than figuring it out. There's a little hint for you, Taurus. And Taurus, probably. I mean, I hope that you have the patience to watch. Gemini, this is in your 10th house, reputation and career. And here we have this Piscean energy in that area getting highlighted for you. And it sort of suggests going forward into whatever your career is, whatever it is you're doing in the world. It doesn't need to be a career. It's a very modern Western approach to it. It doesn't need to be your career. It's what you're doing in the world. And the Piscean energy here, again, the North Node in Pisces is saying, well, what are you doing that is giving? What are you contributing? Right? We all know it's important to succeed, accumulate, and so on. What are you doing that is contributing? And it is perhaps, over the next 18 months at least, it is perhaps by contributing that you wind up, maybe you don't get much back in an ego sense, but contribute. Let's contribute. Cancer, this is your ninth house. This is the big picture stuff. And so the question comes back to you now. And notice that we don't have advice here so much as questions. we have a lot of questions here. The ninth house question for Cancer and Cancer rising is, what are the beliefs? What are the beliefs? Which of the beliefs have worked? Which of the beliefs have not worked? Where can you invest yourself? Is there a system that works for you? Is there a system that works for you? Whatever it is there a philosophy? Is there a religion? Is there some kind of system that works for you? And if so, then what is it? And how, you have 18 months here to see what it's actually doing, what it's actually doing. Never mind the script that they hand you, sign up with us and you'll get this. Does it actually work? Does it actually give you some consolation? And, with the South node in Virgo, we could also ask, but is this really just a bunch of BS? That's another important question for you, Cancer. Leo. Now we have an 8th house transit for you. And it's 2nd and 8th house, because the South node will be in your 2nd house. And this is then a question of finances and material well-being. It kind of works on that. It kind of works on that level. The concern is likely to be about material well-being. But the 8th house question for you, the 8th house often has a lot to do with finances and things like that as well. But the 8th house question for you really winds up being something a little bit more along the lines of, what is your emotional set doing for you or to you? Well, right, if we just, what is the emotional set doing? What difficult, and the 8th house often has a lot to do with difficult emotions. What is giving you a hard time in your emotional set, your emotional experiences? And which of those can you truly let go of? With the South node in Virgo, I would say the problem that you might have would be sort of over-analyzing, over-digging through, seeing if the scab can continually be picked. It can. Every time the wound starts to scab over, you can pick it. The North node in Pisces in the 8th house is sort of saying, don't do that. Don't keep picking at the scab. Don't keep picking at the scab. You could let it heal over. You could let some stuff go. And you'll find that you can breathe easier as a result of the letting go. Now, if you're a Virgo itself, now you've got the South node in your sign. And so it's pretty direct over here. You have to watch the tendency to overanalyze, the tendency to put up a bit of a barrier. That purity thing for Virgos can often come in the form of, and remember, Virgo rising and Virgo sun. The purity thing can often come in the form of a barrier, a little screen that, no matter how close somebody is to you, they don't quite get past that screen. You're always holding a little bit back. Not saying every Virgo. I'm saying this is the risk for Virgo. And so the challenge here is to go towards the North node in Pisces, which is the kind of dissolving of that screen, right? Virgo is whole. You are whole, as they to use the antiquated language of Virgo. You are whole unto yourself. That's not going to go away. You don't need the screen there to protect. And that is your 18-month job, is to see if you can get to the point where you realize that you don't need that screen, because nothing can take away the wholeness. Nothing practical here. Nothing practical. You're not gonna get it's a good time to apply for a job thing with the nodes on these axes. That's fine. Again, we have plenty of other videos coming up this year, plenty of other transitions and changes that will help us with that. If you are a Libra, we are moving now into a sixth house kind of situation, where it is this kind of nice blending of service and letting go. It is like the sixth house is a very Virgo kind of house, and there's the Piscean energy there. And so simply, where can you be of service? Where can you be of help? Where can you let the energy flow through you and so help others, instead of letting it come out of you, right? You don't want the energy to be sort of pulled out of you. You want the energy to flow through you. And now Libra, taking the other's perspective and so on, you can give too much to others. And so the sneaky strategy that you have here for the next 18 months is figuring out how to let things flow through you so you don't get drained in giving to others. And yet, it is your contribution, it is your service that is being called for at the same time. This is a very heady kind of thing, isn't it? If you are a Scorpio, this is a fifth house transit for you. And creativity, very, very neglected aspect of our culture. We feel that, you know, Taylor Swift has got that covered for us, right? Taylor Swift has got that covered for us. So we don't need to be creative. There's a few people out there that are creative. This is a gigantic mistake. And Scorpio, you're being called to think about exactly where you can let flow into your creativity, wherever you find that. And the fifth house is also the house of your joys. It's the house of the things that you love to do. It's the house of the things that you're really excited about, that really, you feel it in your heart. And this is saying, yeah, you've got to invest in those things. You've got to invest in those fifth house things and maybe get a little bit away from what other folks are expecting of you. There's a kind of so and so does this, and we're used to them, and you behave this way, and so on, and your friends and colleagues and stuff think you should be this way. Scorpio, you're being asked to be, in this case, really, much more follow your bliss, follow your joy, follow the things that you think really make it all worthwhile, and have the faith in that. North Node in Pisces, have the faith in it. Follow, take the ride, take the trip, see where it goes. Don't just assume that there is this or that. You don't have to wait around for any one particular outcome. Make it a process, a creative process. You don't need to pick up the clarinet. You don't need to pick up the paintbrushes. Creativity goes beyond that. But if you want to, do those things. Do those things. And don't worry about the product. It's the process. It's the process. The process is going to get you where you need to be. The product, that could be good too. I don't know. Sagittarius, this is a fourth house transit for you. And again, now you're also being asked about your origins. You're also being asked about where you come from, what your root place is, right? Where do you belong? Do you belong in the place that you came from, or do you feel that you belong someplace else? That is the question. You're looking for your home over the next 18 months. You're looking for your home. You're looking for the place where you belong. You're looking for the place that feels comfy. And or maybe it feels a little uncomfortable, and yet somehow or another you still belong there. And much like your Scorpio neighbors to the side over there, the process is very likely going to involve you stepping away from some of the expectations, in this case, your expectations for yourself and what you think you are. What's my reputation? What am I about? and going more towards what you're actually really feeling for. Sagittarius, you ought to be good at this. This should not be a problem for you. But a little hint doesn't hurt. But that you should be good at this. For Capricorn, this is a third house transit. And in this case, the third house is not one of the ones that gets a lot of attention. And it has, in this case, I think, a lot to do with reflecting upon your own thought patterns and your own assumptions about things, and the determinants that seem to be the walls within which every argument, within which every activity is structured, because this is what we know to be true. Maybe it ain't. Maybe it ain't. And without overanalyzing, because that would be South Node in Virgo, the North Node is asking you to say, well, what is your experience really telling you? What is your experience teaching you? That's what this means if you're a Capricorn rising. What is this doing for you? Finally, if you are an Aquarius, this is a second house transit. And here we're going to get, I am not one with the whole psychological interpretation of the second house. But in this case, I'm going to go a little bit that way and say that this has a lot to do with your values. What are your values? And which of those values really reflect you? And which of those values don't? Now, Aquarius is a sign of ideals, so it's not so much about values as a rule. I mean, Aquarians have values, but they're very much about their ideals. Values are the things that we hold as valuable, right? The ideas that we hold as valuable as the kind of foundation. Ideals are what we're reaching towards because we think that that is the best. This is about your values, Aquarius, which maybe not the most common, not the thing that you're thinking about all that much. What are your values? Do they work? Are they working for you? And which of those might we let go of? Which of our assumptions about the way things have to be, the way things are, and the way things should be, need to be revised? You can still hold on to your ideals. You can still hold on to your, this is where we're all heading, this is where things should be going, and this is what should be. But the structural values that underlie things, this is where you gotta take the focus over the next 18 months. So you see, for all the signs, it's a journey. It's a journey. It's not about one simple strategy. It's not about coming to one particular conclusion. It's not about even one area of life where you're going to put your emphasis or anything like that. We got a little bit of a hint, very much internal kind of process, and we're going to have to work. Well, work is very Virgo. Well, that's good. We're going to have to do a little bit of work. We're going to have a lot of experiences to see which things are working and which things are not. It is very much a process-oriented position for the nodes. The nodes are going to go on. They're going to meet with Saturn. They're going to meet with Neptune in the other order. And so as we go through and then of course the eclipses are going to be on the Virgo Pisces axis. Now, we've got a lot of changes coming up that are going to sort of heat things up and light things up in the collective. And some of us, if you happen to have a planet right there or something like that, would happen to be right at the degree where the nodes meet Neptune, you're going to have quite the experience. But it is very much a kind of learning experience that is not necessarily all that easy to pin down to one particular point in time. All right. We'll go forward, keep following up with the weekly forecasts, get ready for the Neptune in Aries and Saturn in Aries coming in the springtime. and we'll see you soon.